Well, a huge big welcome to Donald Brooks. Donald's speaking to us from Asuncion in Paraguay, and it's lovely that you're part of this connected series of videos that we're doing. Donald, I wonder, would you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and your faith in Jesus?
All right. Well, as you call me, I am Donald Brooks. I am 39 years old, and I am from Argentina. From the province of Córdoba. And I used to live in a very small town called Los Cocos. It's a very, very small town with a few people. And I am married since 15 years old with Caroline Venables. She's my wife. And we have three kids, three children. The eldest one, the first one is Tommy. Tommy is 11 years old. The second one is Maya. She's 8 years old. And the third one is Katya, and she is only 5 years old. Actually, well, currently I am a pastor of the Anglican Church in Paraguay. And well, currently my job is to be St. Andrew School chaplain. St. Andrew School is the school of the Anglican Church here in Paraguay. So that's my job. Um, Sharing something about my faith in Jesus, what I can say is, well, the first time I met Jesus, it was at my age of 17, 17 years old. And I began to attend to the youth group of the Anglican Church in my town. Those was my first step in my faith. But my conversion is not something shocking from only one day, like many people was. My conversion was a process. Nothing extraordinary happened. It simply was Jesus revealing himself to my life little by little, step to step, until I got to the point that I could not imagine my life without Jesus. So later, at the age of 21, when I was 21 years old, my desire was to study theology. So through this, serve in the church. So that's how I came here to Paraguay for study theology here. And this is how I have lived in Paraguay for 15 years, since 15 years. Yeah.
And Donald, what does mission mean for you?
Well, the missions for me is what I can say, the way I said it is, mission is God's plan to spread the gospel all around the world, and the channel is us, the people that God use for the mission around the world. So we are the channel, and all the believers have the mission to preach the gospel, no matter if you are working, whenever you are working, if you work in a church or everywhere else. No matter who we are, we all are missionaries in the world. But some people are called to leave their land, their culture, their comfort, and go to another part to the world to preach the gospel. But something that is important for me is that the gospel can be preached in a number of ways, not only speaking, not only saying things about Jesus. That is something essential, of course. That's something very important. But preach the gospel can be through doing some service, uh, teaching in school or teaching in somewhere. It can be doing by a service we can do for other people. in another part, by some projects also. There are many ways to preach the gospel, or we have, how do you say, gift from God to do it. So that was what mission for me. Mission is be allowed to preach the gospel everywhere you are. But some people have the call to trip and travel and live in another country, in another region, with a totally different culture for doing it.
Mm. And how did mission play out in your life? You said you came to Paraguay, and little
Well,
by little, how did that all work out?
well, I, as I was sharing before, I came to Paraguay for study theology, and I never meant in my life to be a missionary. I just came here because, well, my girlfriend Caroline, actually my wife now, but she was living here because she was born here in Paraguay. Her parents are from England, but she was born here. So we met in Buenos Aires, and I told her that I wanted to study theology, and she was already living here in Paraguay. So she told me, why don't you come here to Paraguay to study theology? There is a very good college here. So I came, but then while I was studying theology, I was in another country, and then I began to work in the church, and then many years later, I was ordained. So without any intention to about being a missionary, I found myself working in another country with another culture, serving in the church, and wanted to be ordained, and then be ordained here in the Church of Paraguay. So I found myself working for God far away from my land, and I was working here in the church, in the Anglican Church in Luque, and the name of the church is Centro Cristiano Emanuel. So that was the place my first place as pastor. Sometimes combined with the Anglican Church of Cathedral San Andres, St. Andrew's Cathedral, sometimes working as a Bible teacher, in the St. Andrew's School. So I was working in different places. And the last church I been working here before moved to Argentina for just 2 years was in St. Andrew's Chapel with the English-speaking congregation here. So that's the way I was involved in mission for here in Paraguay.
Yeah, and it sounds as if you heard God's call step by step, and
Yeah, it was
doors
step by step.
opened, and you followed, and it's
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I never had a real ambition in a good sense, a real ambition to be a missionary. But if you ask me if I like to do it, yes, I like to be a missionary,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Donald, what advice would you give to anybody who wants to be more involved with God's worldwide mission?
Well, if someone wants to be a missionary or want to get involved in some way, my advice in the first term, the first thing I could say to that person is that to be a missionary is about love for God. The main reason, the main motivation for being a missionary is to love God. In order to love God, to love another people. You need a lot of love because for serve others in another country or another region, in another culture, you will need to learn another language and learn to live in another culture. In another culture with totally different codes, totally different uses. So it's hard. It's maybe a bit complicated. So love is the first thing you need to have, and that means also passion for God, passion for the people. passion for the people. For me, for example, to be working for God, that's has had the mean for me to that everyone that Jesus is in everyone, and every one person who is in front of me that I have to serve implies that Jesus died for that person, and I have to be able to serve that person. It's about serving, and you have to be able with all your heart for serve. And the second thing is that God is not sending you to be a missionary at your place or in another place only for serve others, but also for works in your life, because your life will change completely if you are a missionary, and you will know God better, and will be revealed to your life many things, many things. So the right attitude to be a missionary is not, I am the savior, I am going to do the life of the other people change and at all. Yes, of course, you will be a angels change agent in where you will be. So the right attitude also think that God will be work in your life, that God will be doing something not only through your life but also in your life. So that will be my advice, to be also able to receive that.
Yeah. No, those are very wise things to say about having a love for people, and then also to know that God is also working in our own lives wherever
Yeah.
we end up. Donald, just before we end, lots of people who know you will know that you've been on a very difficult health journey, and you recently had a condition with a transplant, which is, I suppose, giving you a new lease of life to go about God's mission. Do you want to say something like that as we finish?
Yes, of course. I am delighted to share that with you and all the people who might be watching this. But yeah, during our time here in Paraguay, we had 2 years in Argentina, and the reason was that 4 years ago, my kidneys, both of them, failed completely. They stopped working and they don't work it anymore. So the only solution for that problem is dialysis. So I started dialysis, and the complete solution is the kidney transplant. So after 2 years that I was doing dialysis here in Paraguay, we decided to move to Argentina, and seek a transplant there. And it was not easy because to move back again with 3 kids, find a new job, not only me, my wife, is all a challenge. It's not the challenge for my health. It's also a challenge for all the family. But all the family kept united, kept very, very close on each other in communion. So it was a very big challenge. But after 9 years living in Argentina, the transplant arrived. The transplant came for my life, and it was in 23 June in 2019. The transplant for me is like having regained my life, to have my life again. To be in dialysis implies a lot of time. Is 3 times per week by 4 hours connected to the machine. So it's like live again, to have a new life. It's like reborn in some way. And it's very special to be thankful to another person that saved your life. So that's all I am feeling every day. It's a feel of gratitude, enormous feel of of gratitude, to be thankful. But the most important thing in all this is that we learn to trust God in all sense. Because before that, in my life, I had preaching a lot of time about have faith, to be trustful in God. But that all that happened with my transplant was a real challenge and a real test for my faith and the faith of all my family. But we really trust now, because we learned that God is always there and God had a plan. So our faith is stronger now. So,
Yeah.
and then we moved back to Paraguay after 2 years living in Argentina. So,
So with those words of helping us to understand again what real trust and faith in God is, wherever we are called to God's mission work, bringing the good news of Jesus. Donald, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing something of your faith in Jesus and what it means for you. We're in your place of work. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.